never seen.
Yo, what's up guys? Bill here, Classic Rock and Metal Review. That's right, yes, another new episode. This one has been kicking around in my head since probably last spring, just like a lot of these other newer episodes we've been trying the last few months. This one just called Underrated, as you might imagine, just me trying to defend an album that I think doesn't get its due. In this case, I mean, this is probably the granddaddy of them all. What better place to start than the much maligned, much derided Pink Floyd, The Final Cut. I don't think you're going to even believe how great I think this album is. I know you probably don't care where I think it is, but anyway, I'm going to do my best to defend this greatness right here in my hand. We're looking at one of the original 80s CDs that I've had since back then. But I've got some tastier stuff to show you guys too. We'll go through all this crap at the end. This one I got maybe 10, 12 years ago. It's a CD and DVD. Got some bonus stuff on there as far as the video content, the video EPs on the second disc. Some bonus stuff like I just said. You get the full version with an extra track on the CD. And then when we're done screwing around with that, this bootleg 4 CD, mini little box set, I guess you can basically call it, loaded with goodies, single edits, alternate songs like, you know, outtakes, demos of the entire album, interviews. Awesome. We'll get to this at the end, show that off. Love that thing. I just listened to the Demos CD, which is an entire CD, the other day. If you guys can like or subscribe before we get started, we just talk. Basically, I'm just talking to you the way I would talk to myself if I was at home, listening to music, and these are the things that go on in my brain while I'm doing so. But not before we pull up a drink. Your choice tonight. I'm going with vodka, pineapple, orange, mango. I don't do straight liquor. I admit I can't handle it. And that's refreshing. All right. Where's Floyd at when Final Cut comes about? So in '78, Waters presents the band with either The Wall or Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. He tells the band at that time, pick one, and I'm going to eventually do a solo album with the other one. Obviously, they choose The Wall. So you notice I didn't say Final Cut in there. Final Cut is basically comes about from extra songs from The Wall. Something they were calling spare bricks, I think. For the film, they end up going back into the studio to re-record The Wall. For whatever reason, against Gilmour's wishes, but they opted to re-record all those songs for the movie. When the movie was finally released, one of the songs that they had recorded for it was, of course, When the Tigers Broke Free. So they had that, and they had 4 other songs still sitting there, pretty much fleshed out and pretty much done, that they wanted to do something with. And like I said, the original project was going to be called Spare Bricks. So they somehow the re-recording of the soundtrack songs led to the Spare Bricks sessions. And then what happened was, rather than it being some EP or whatever have you, the Falkland Islands incident happened. The British, ruled Falkland Islands, where I think it was Argentina that sort of, they were off the coast of Argentina, and Argentina sort of tried to stake a claim on them. So the British had to, send warships over and, fight for it to get it back. I think it only took a few months, 74 days or something. I remember all this happening. So basically, this all stirred things up in Waters again. The whole war, although it was only a short one. And we'll get into why as I go down the tracks of the album. But that's basically what started Waters writing again. Writing songs based loosely on just war alone. With, obviously citing some things that were happening right then and there with the Falklands War. And we'll get into that, man. I think you'll find it a little interesting when we talk about some of the things that made, some of the lyrics that made their way into the record due to what was going on. But I really feel like he really was able to tie in the 4 leftover songs that all were on Final Cut, and the new material with his commentary on Britain and the war going on in the Falklands, successfully with, and it's a little bit of an epilogue to The Wall. which is, you get to see what Pink and the teacher are up to, at some years removed. Now, I mean, that's just my sort of conjecture, but it's, I think, popular opinion too. That the album is basically them looking back on, what happened with the wall, but it's some point later, maybe there's been therapy, who knows? It's a wider view and a pulled back view of the things that happened in the wall. Now, why wasn't it successful? I mean, I'm going to go down, I think I have 4 or 5 main points. Things I've heard people say over the years, things I remember people saying back in the 80s about this album. So I'm not just pulling shit out of my hat here. And there were pretty common complaints. Number one, I think the one complaint we hear about a lot is that it's just plain boring. There's really not a lot of rockers. What is boring? I mean, all of this is in the eye of the beholder. I understand that, right? Music, movies, everything else in life. The one thing I am not when I listen to this album, and even when I go back to the 80s, and I had most of their albums by 87 or 88, okay? And I was only 17, so it's not like I grew up with Floyd. I wasn't even listening to them at all until about 85, 86. But I had all their albums by 87, mostly because I had a job where I could just take them home. And I did. And I had, most of their catalog. One of the last ones I got to was the Final Cut. My cousin told me, when you get into that, you're going to love it. My experience with it was on headphones, alone, in bed. I had a Walkman with a tape player, and that's how I did a lot of listening. I had a bunch of albums that I listened to. That's how I listened to them the first time I heard them. Final Cut being one of them. This thing comes with a 4-page book, and it's really well written, not just something thrown together. It's not a bootleg type of thing at all. All right? And one of the points they make in here is this is a work that demands the listener's time, attention, and headphones, which I don't listen to anything on headphones anymore, but it is the way I got into this, so I totally know what they mean. I don't know, when does mellow mean boring? It's not an all-out rockin' album. It's got some high, hard rockin' points. It's got the ones, Not Now John, it's pretty hard rockin'. Overall, it's pretty on the mellow side. It's not boring at all. I mean, the lyrics are as great as ever. Rogers, they might be his best lyrics he ever wrote, to be honest with you. I mean, all of his lyrics are pretty awesome. These, right up there. I don't know what album I would say has better writing than this. This is, I'm going to say this emphatically, this is Rogers' best singing he ever did and would ever do. It is so intense. Every freaking syllable is intense. I mean, it's just, this is what I mean by headphones. This is all the little things that you're going to notice if you listen to this closely. Or just put it on in your living room when you're alone. Whatever you have to do to experience this the right way. Gilmour doesn't have enough guitar playing, electric guitar playing on this album. Might have 4 or 5 solos in the whole thing. But some of them are among his best. One of them is among my favorite guitar solos of all time by anybody. And he's got a few of them, all right? I'm going to say that. I'll tell you that much. Absolutely. But one of them's incredible. Sound effects, all right? This is some of the coolest sound effects. Nothing's overdone. I don't think you hear the same sound effect twice on this whole album, and there must be 30 of them or 40 or 50 of them. They're just used with perfect class and perfect touch. And they were actually using a brand new, what was called holophonic technique to record these effects. It was a way of recording different sounds with some sort of surround sound mix, which at the time was very innovative. All right, so boring, that's in the eye of the beholder, obviously. I don't think so, but overall, is it a rock and roll, rockin' album? No, you're not going to throw this one at a party to impress chicks, all right? I'll admit that much. Doesn't make it boring. Political, yes, it is. I mean, where the wall was kind of dealing with the acute psychotic effects of somebody traumatized by the effects of war. Final Cut is more of like I said before, the pulled back, chronic issues that lie with you even after maybe you make it over the psychotic episode, but what's going to happen years later? You know, like basically the wall was, if you to put it in like a butcher's sense, right? The rough cut. And then here we have sort of, you know, the fine cuts, the final cut. Just dissecting things, you know, there's no more explosions going on around you, but now you're sort of staring back and trying to sort it out. And the final cut, which is also sort of another double entendre with the, you know, the knife in the back of the soldier, just like on the album. So there's that. So like I said, the Falklands conflict was going on. It was current. So basically what Roger was trying to say with that was, you know, one of the songs on here is called The Post-War Dream. One of the things mentioned by our leaders, world leaders after World War II, was, you know, we cannot let this happen again. We can't just go to war over anything. We have to use diplomacy as much as possible. And I think when the Falklands happened, it took like Britain like a few hours to get over there and start shelling them, you know. So Wooders took that as like yet another betrayal. So it's no wonder it instigated him and, you know, basically, what's the word I'm looking for? The inspiration to write this album and these other songs, you know. So yeah, is it political? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. Is that a reason not to like an album? Well, then you probably don't like The Wall, for God's sake, and even Animals at that. So get that excuse out of my face. All right, they're Wall leftovers. That's another complaint you hear. They were just Wall leftovers. I mean, I don't really give a shit what they're leftover from. Does anyone remember the album Animals? They were actually written in '74 before they recorded Wish You Were Here. Okay, so the Animals songs, two of them anyway, were leftover Wish You Were Here songs. Leftovers means nothing, all right? It's really almost irrelevant. That was Gilmour's big argument with why he didn't like the cut. They weren't good enough for The Wall. Why are they good enough for this? I mean, that's like one of the lousiest arguments I've ever heard. I mean, if good songs are good songs, who cares what they're left over from? 4 of them were leftovers from The Wall. Gilmour only likes 3 of these songs, okay? And 2 of them were the new songs they wrote. So he liked one of the old leftovers, and he, so just, you know, to give you just a little insight on how he feels about it. This CD, listening to this CD with the effects, the songs, the lyrics, Roger's intense voice, it's almost like an audio book with Pink Floyd playing music to it. There's a video EP that just, it's really amateurish, you know, doesn't do this album justice at all. Of course, it's cool to watch once in a while. And I'm a Floyd nut and I'm a Final Cut nut, but the video EP is kind of lame. It really is, especially in comparison to the album. These may be Wall leftovers, but I contend that if you dropped these songs, all 10, 12, whatever, into The Wall and made The Wall a triple album instead of a double album, no one would be saying anything about these songs, okay? So I'm decided, I rest my case right there. The last thing I'll say is that people call it a Roger Waters solo album. That's probably the last point I'll make, and then we'll run down the set list and I'll show you some goodies. But Gilmour said, I'm not going to sit here and say that I had nothing at that time. He's like, but I think I pretty much only had nothing. He didn't really have anything written to do. Not that like they were expecting to do an album. This sort of morphed from the Wall soundtrack, like I said. But he pretty much admits he had nothing written. So I guess my point here is that this was the only way Pink Floyd was going to do an album at that time, okay? Is with Waters doing what he had been doing for 5 or 6 years now and writing a new album. So being that as it may, who's the best singer to be on this album? Gilmour sounds great on Not Now, John. He probably would have sounded really good on a few other songs. But honestly, Waters was the man for these songs. That voice, that intense, over the top, every syllable is like a spike in your eye. That is Roger. You know, this is Roger's baby, and it was the only way it was going to sound as amazing as it was. So there's a Roger Waters solo album. I don't, call it that if you want. I don't really agree, but it has as much to do with it or more than he had on The Wall. by necessity, is my point. So Mason, so let's address it being a Waters solo album. Nick Mason, his playing style had gone away from that, random awesome rolls he used to do back in Pompeii or whatever. But that style of just playing straight ahead rock sounds great here. These songs are straight ahead songs when it comes to full band being in there. And anyway, those straight rolls just go perfect with that whole sort of military aura that's here. And Mason, by the way, was the one responsible for all the sound effects and recording them with this new holophonic recording system. So he gets credit for all these effects on there. Gilmour, of course, he's on Not Now John. He sings the verses. I don't think he wrote that song, but the solo in there is amazing. All the solos that he does on this album are amazing. It's almost as if he was taking out whatever frustrations he had on the guitar. They're incredible, and there's not enough of them, I'll agree with that. But like I said, he really had nothing to contribute, generally speaking. So now Waters, he mentions that he knew a quarter way through the album that he would never record with Mason or Gilmour again. Which is kind of, a shame, obviously. But now Rick Wright, he had been, I read somewhere in an article fairly recently saying that Rick Wright left after The Wall. He was actually not a member of the band on The Wall. They put his name on the album, but contractually, he was already dismissed from the band. He was sort of hired and, like an Ace Frehley in 82 style. He was still in the band, for publicity reasons, name on the wall and all, on the Wall concerts, yes, but he was already not officially a member anymore. So he's not there, but I'll tell you, the piano playing on here is great, the organ playing, fantastic, and it sounds as if he's on here. I mean, it doesn't sound any better than him. It sounds, to me, as good as something he would have did. All right, so let's run down the album real quick. First song, Post-War Dream. I would just say, Waters is just asking what happened. Like I said, after the World War II, things were supposed to be sort of a calmer, gentler world, and, one little squabble happens, and it's, 900 people or something got killed in that Argentinian war. So, Waters just coming right out, and he's calling out Margaret Thatcher as Maggie. Maggie, what have we done? It's short, but it has every ingredient of what makes all these songs great. Roger's biting lyrics, the sound effects, cool Gilmour on guitar, sudden dynamic changes from mellow to loud. Good song to start it. Your Possible Past might be my favorite one on here. This has a favorite guitar solo from Gilmour, or one of them of all time. And it's not something 100 miles an hour. This is a sort of slow solo. So intense. I mean, the sound he's getting out of that guitar. I once had a friend say, I think we were listening to Obscured by Clouds, one of the solos on there. And he said, that's how a guitar should sound. And that's exactly how this guitar sounds. It's got some distortion, but not much. This is mostly just Dave, inserting his, will on this guitar and bending the strings to hell and just firing it up, man. Outstanding. Just love that song. It might be my favorite on there. Next one is One of the Few. This is one left over from The Wall. As was Your Possible Past, I believe. Awesome soundscape sets the mood for this one. You seg into this ticking clock, and now we're in bed with the teacher and his wife. I think she's sleeping, and this is the only time he can talk to her. So it's really kind of a cool, little snapshot of what this teacher's going through. He's a post-war vet himself, which I never knew watching The Wall. I don't know, were we supposed to know that? Because I didn't, It alternates, the things he's saying, the lyrics, he's alternating between losing his shit and killing the class versus teaching them. I mean, it's just really, this is just intense stuff. I hate to even sit here and say it out loud because this really needs to be experienced. The Hero's Return is next, another leftover from The Wall. These are another of the vet's teacher's memories from the war. Again, Roger with the vocals and every little syllable creates drama. I mean, his voice on here can be pretty damn creepy, you know. Such feeling. In the very last words of the song, you know, you hear the gunner's dying words on the intercom. So is this the teacher listening to the gunner being died in the back of the plane or being killed? It's basically addressing like survivor's guilt, which, you know, back in 1982, was anyone talking about survivor's guilt? I feel like that's like a term from the last decade or so. The Gunner's Dream, another one of my favorites. I know Waters played this on some of his earlier tours. What lyrics to be like, I mean, the lyrics are basically about the gunner who's been shot out of the plane. He's fallen to the ground and he's picturing his own funeral. And the lyrics on here are just some of the most like touching and like just sad, and the sound effects again at the funeral, like it's just off the charts. Like, but or is it the teacher who was at the front of the plane who knows his gunner's falling? Yeah, it's just, this is like kind of a complex album, but it's not really. I'm making it sound more complex than it is. I'm also trying to leave some of it to, you know, the listener, you know, you, because these are just sort of my takes on things. Next we got, at the end of Gunner's Dream, there's a sax solo. I'll never forget this as long as I live. When I was first listening to this album, and of course I had a little something, you know, going on before I listened, without indicting myself. Roger lets out the scream. You hold on to the dream and just holds the note of dream, and the note turns into a saxophone solo. It just blows your mind, man. Incredible. Love it. Paranoid Eyes is next. Our character's sitting at the bar. You know, this one's nothing super special, but it's cool. It's just, you know, of course you hear the bar, you know, sounds and stuff. Fletcher Memorial Home. This is another one Dave really liked, along with Final Cut, and I think Your Possible Past. I'm not sure about that one, but there was 3 that he liked off this album. Fletcher Memorial Home is just a place where all the old leaders go to die, where they have TVs everywhere with them on the TV, so that they'll, you know, recognize them, you know, be at peace with them. I don't know. It's just so cool. This is one where the video is kind of cheesy, but the point of it's pretty cool. Dave has a nice double track solo at the end of the song. It's pretty awesome. Southampton Dock, a little on the mellow side. Simple folky, you know, just sorts of paints a little picture. We're in England, you know. The Final Cut, another one, like I said, Dave likes. Very Wall-like. You could see where, you know, this would be a Wall leftover, and it is. Slow piano song for the most part. Then the band does come in, sort of comfortably numb-like. It's got strings going on. Another, you know, this is probably a song about Pink in my eyes, especially with this. At least I always got that impression. There's some lyrics. Will you sell your story to Rolling Stone? Will you take the children away and leave me alone? I just feel like that's the continuation of the, you know, the phone call where his wife's with someone else. I think this might be, like I said, the whole album, but this song, again, some of Roger's best vocals he ever would do. Not Now John, the only single from the album, the only real rocker, straight ahead rocker, and this song's awesome. I always loved this song. I remember hearing this on the radio for 4 or 5 years before I had the record. Much needed rocker, by the way. It just probably could have been placed a little earlier, but I guess this was just the place to put it. And Roger mentions, you know, about the, you know, Japanese building. So, but that also came from the Falkland War. There was a ship of the British that got damaged or sunk or whatever in that Falklands War, and it was announced before this album was made, obviously at some point, that the ship was going to be replaced by being built in Japan. So that's where you get all those Japan references in the video for Not Now John and stuff like that. Finally, we finish up with Two Sons in the Sunset. Another soft rocker with like that explosive bridge that, you know, Floyd's known for. Now this can be either a metaphor for either nuclear war happening, you know, the sun and the nuclear explosion in the rearview mirror, or it could be just the car's driver, this is my opinion, sort of wondering where he's headed as he's driving. There's two sons in the sunset, you know, normal happy life, or continuing to suffer with this trauma. Either way, you know, there's two suns in the sunset, and ashes and diamonds, foe and friend, we are all equal in the end. And then we just fade out to a sax solo. What a brilliant ending to a freaking awesome album. And of course, you know, the song fades out with the sax solo, also fades out with the car radio on, okay? And in the usual way, sort of always continuous flow with all Floyd albums, when the video EP starts, it starts with car stereo on, you know, and the teacher driving the car. So, I mean, you start digging into this album, man, it's something, you know. It's, if you're a Floyd enthusiast, man, Floyd fan who doesn't like Final Cut, check it the hell out. Again, that's all I got to say. Roger Waters' lyrics are insane. His singing's the best ever. Gilmore, when he's in there, is incredible. You know, taking out his shit on the guitars, how I feel. Whatever, however pissed off he was at Roger. All right, so we already looked at the early 80s, or rather late 80s CD. Typical. This thing I got, like I said, about 10 years ago. CD, DVD, man. This is, I'm not sure what the deal is with this. I was trying to find it now to get some info. It folds out like double digipack. Okay, it says it's made in EU. Looks official. I mean, I when I got it, there was 4 or 5 sellers selling it. Kind of cool. You get some images behind the CD. This CD has the version with When the Tigers Broke Free put on there, and it's like the 5th song. So what's it after? Heroes Return, maybe, or something. I don't like it being on here. I'm just always going to consider When the Tigers Broke Free a Wall song, you know, Wall movie song. And I'm good with that. I don't feel like it belongs on here, to be honest. And then we got the DVD video EP, Roger doing a couple songs from Final Cut, and I forget where. And then you got a couple of short, brief little interviews. They look like just clips out of some biography that was on TV. So now to the big boy. This one was called, I have a hookup with Bootlegs who's in the UK. And I just heard from him a few days ago, and it was the first time I heard from him since November. So I thought he was put out of business, but he's still around. He just hasn't had much to update us with. That's where, he's the only guy I know that gets these things. They're long box, 4 CD things. You get a CD, high resolution remaster, they call it. Nothing super special to me. Just sounds a little echoey. That's one disc. And you do get on that one, I'm trying to see here. You do get some other songs on there. Final Cut comments, interviews, David and Roger interview from '84. David playing You Know I'm Right, live from Hammersmith, which was a song about Roger. But the meat and potatoes is disc 1. It's demos from every song on the album. Also, Heroes Return Part 2 demo. Also, When the Tigers Broke Free single edit. Bring the Boys Back Home, which was the B-side of that single edit. Not Now John, some obscure version. Promo version, you know, with the censored. And then Heroes Return Parts 1 and 2 put together, which, as you know, Heroes Return Part 2 was never on the album. And then later down the demos, you get Heroes Return Part 2 also as a demo. Then the other 2 discs are just really interviews, mostly with Roger, but still cool to have. These go for $70 when they come out, but he lowers the price to $40 after 3-4 months. That's what happened here. I got it for $40. Love it. Numbered sticker up your ass. And that's it, man. That's what I got to say about the Final Cut. There's a song, Post-War Dream. I just consider this album semi anyway, or at least mostly the post-Wall dream. You put it in that context, if you're a Wall fan and not a Cut fan, maybe you'll kind of dig it. If you haven't heard it in a while, headphone it up and check it out again. Guys, that's going to do it for our longest episode ever. I knew this was going to be long, but Jesus Christ. If you can like and subscribe, we like to talk about rock music like we're still 15. That's the deal, even though we're 50 plus. Cheers. Thanks everyone who subscribed. See you in a couple days. I think it's the monthly haul. I got not a big haul this month, but I'll show you what I got, and maybe we'll look at a few things from last month. All right, that'll do it. Catch us later.